History is full of artists who burned too bright too soon. Musicians so ahead of their time that the world simply wasn't ready. They were ignored, dismissed, or buried by an industry too blind to see their genius. Some faded into obscurity. Some walked away convinced they had failed. But time has a funny way of setting the record straight, because great music doesn't disappear, it just hibernates. And when the world finally catches up, what once was overlooked becomes legendary. These are 5 musicians who were too brilliant for their time until the world woke up. Number 1, Rodriguez. Picture this, it's 1970. Rodriguez, a Detroit singer-songwriter with a voice like a revolutionary, drops the album Cold Fact. It wasn't just an album, it was a Molotov cocktail thrown at the establishment. His lyrics cut through society like a switchblade, ripping through war, poverty, addiction, and corruption with a fearlessness that made Bob Dylan seem like an amateur. And his sound? A psychedelic folk explosion. So raw, so hypnotic, it could have been shaking stadiums. But in the US, nothing. No airplay, no sales. Record executives tossed him aside like yesterday's news. So Rodriguez did what any forgotten genius does. He walked away, picked up a sledgehammer, worked in construction where he hauled refrigerators on his back, and worked like his music never happened. And as far as he knew, his dream was dead. Buried beneath the rubble he broke for a paycheck. Except half a world away, he was a legend. In South Africa, Cold Fact wasn't just popular. It was the gospel, bigger than Elvis, bigger than the Beatles. His voice became a battle cry for a generation fighting against oppression. Every protest march, every underground resistance, Rodriguez was a soundtrack for a revolution. His words gave hope, his songs saved lives, and here's the kicker, they thought he was dead. Rumors swirled that he torched himself on stage. He became more than a musician. He was a myth, a martyr, a mystery. That wasn't until the 90s when a South African journalist and a record store owner turned into detectives determined to find the truth. What they uncovered? Rodriguez was still alive, still in Detroit, still working construction, completely unaware that 8,000 miles away he was worshipped as a god. Then, in 1998, they flew him to South Africa for his first show in almost 30 years. The arena sold out, the crowd unhinged. People sobbed, screamed, collapsed in awe like they were watching Jesus return from the dead. And Rodriguez, he didn't miss a beat as thousands of voices sang his words back to him, proving his music never died. Fast forward to 2012, the Oscar-winning documentary Searching for Sugar Man drops, and Rodriguez finally gets what he deserved. Global fame, sold-out tours, and a second life. A man who went from breaking concrete to breaking records. A comeback story? No. A resurrection. One of the greatest in rock history. Number 2, a band called Death. It's 1975. David, Bobby, and Dennis Hackney are ripping through tracks like Politicians in My Eyes. Their sound, a wild, untamed beast, ferocious, fast, raw. They weren't just ahead of their time, they were playing from the future. A mix of proto-punk fury and rock and roll soul, decades before the world was ready. But the industry, total cowards. Labels loved their music, hated the name. Change it, they demanded. The band refused. Death meant something. So instead of the record deal, they got locked out. No airplay, no contracts, no shot. By 77, they were done, shattered into obscurity. Their album unfinished, their music just collecting dust. For decades, Death was nothing. A whisper in the underground, a what if of rock history. Then in the 2000s, something insane happened. Jello Biafra of Dead Kennedy stumbled on a rare Def 7-inch in a record store. Underground punk radio stations caught wind. The world finally heard what they had missed, and jaws hit the floor. Turns out the Hackneys never lost the original master tapes of the unreleased album. Almost 30 years later, it finally dropped, and it blew people's minds. Then in 2012, a documentary, A Band Called Death, exploded onto the scene, and suddenly Death was back, reformed on stage, blowing crowds away. The world had finally caught up. It took 3 decades, but Death proved the ultimate truth. If you create something real, something raw, something great, it'll find its audience, even if it takes 30 years. Number 3, Pentagram. In the early 70s, Pentagram emerged from the underground like something conjured from the depths. A band that played heavier, darker, and doomier than anything before them. Led by Bobby Liebling, their riffs were pure devastation, so heavy that Black Sabbath sounded radio-friendly in comparison. But the music industry, they ran scared. Labels didn't get it. Managers bailed. Liebling was too raw, too unpredictable, too much of a wild card. They had close calls with success. In 1975, they jammed for Blue Oyster Cult's producers and absolutely nailed it. But Liebling, unwilling to compromise, clashed over creative control. Kiss even took notice, even considering buying Pentagram songs. Liebling, he refused to sell. Maybe it was integrity, maybe it was stubbornness. Either way, it sealed their fate. By 1976, Pentagram was in a freefall. Liebling's drug use spiraled, band members quit, and the chaos just took its toll, leaving behind just a few albums and a few demo tapes that were never released. For decades, Pentagram was a ghost band, only known to die-hard metal fans trading bootlegs. Then in the 2000s, they rose up from the dead. Vinyl junkies unearthed those early recordings, and suddenly, every doom metal band in the game, from Sleep to Electric Wizard, was pointing back to Pentagram as a blueprint. Then in 2011, a documentary called Last Days Here showed Liebling's downfall and resurrection. At his lowest, he was a skeletal wreck, living in his parents' basement, addiction eating him alive. But with the help of die-hard fans, he clawed his way back. A new lineup, tours, and Pentagram reborn from the grave. By the 2010s, they were finally getting the recognition as the doom metal pioneers they were always meant to be. And Liebling, at 70, he's still on stage proving that Pentagram was never just a band. It was a prophecy that took decades to be fulfilled. And now, in 2025, Pentagram is going viral. Their hypnotic live performances are pulling a new generation of fans. Their latest album, Lightning in a Bottle, released on Heavy Psych Sounds Records, is exploding 50 years after the band's inception. Die-hard metal fans have always known, but now the rest of the world is catching up. The lesson? It's never too late. Pentagram refused to change, refused to quit, and now they're bigger than ever. The industry ignored them, but time bends for real artistry. Great music doesn't fade, it just waits for the world to finally hear it. Number 4, Nick Drake. In the late 1960s, as the folk scene evolved, Nick Drake emerged. Not as a performer hungry for fame, but as an artist completely lost in his own world. His 3 albums were masterpieces. Intricate guitar work, poetic lyricism, and a voice that felt like a secret only a few would hear. He fought record labels over his sound, refusing to follow the reverb-drenched, radio-friendly trends of the time. He wanted his voice clear, raw, and intimate, and he wouldn't compromise. But the world wasn't listening. His music barely left a dent in the mainstream. He shunned the spotlight, rarely performing live, only about 20 times in total, and avoided interviews. There are barely any photos of him because he kept to himself, a total recluse. Critics dismissed him, audiences didn't understand him, and the industry moved on without him. Frustrated and delusioned, he faded into obscurity. In 1974, at just 26, Nick Drake passed away, believing he was a failure, never knowing that his music would have outlived him. But decades later, his whisper became an earthquake. In the 90s, his songs resurfaced, first through cult followings, then through a 1999 Volkswagen commercial that introduced Pink Moon to the masses. Suddenly, the world was listening. Artists like Radiohead, Norah Jones, and Bon Iver hailed him as a genius. His records, once ignored, became sacred texts for musicians and fans seeking something pure, something timeless. Nick Drake wasn't made for the 60s, but the world eventually caught up. Today, his music resonates deeper than ever, a ghostly voice that refuses to fade. He never got to see it, never got to feel the love his music now receives. But for those who listen, his legacy is undeniable, proof that true art doesn't die, it just waits for the right ears to hear it. Number 5, Daniel Johnston. Daniel Johnston was unlike anyone else. His music was raw, childlike, and painfully honest. Recorded on cheap tape recorders, filled with imperfections, it made it feel more real than anything else on the radio. In the 1980s, while working at McDonald's in Austin, Texas, he handed out homemade cassette tapes to anyone who would take one. His songs, fragile, beautiful, and deeply personal, were dismissed by most as oddball outsider art, something only underground weirdos would appreciate. But to those who actually listened, he was a genius. Then something surreal happened. At the height of Nirvana's fame, Kurt Cobain was photographed wearing a Hi How Are You t-shirt at the MTV Music Awards. That single image sent shockwaves to the industry. Suddenly, Daniel Johnston, the unknown guy with the cassette recorder, was the name on every record label's lips. Labels scrambled to find him, unaware that he was in a mental institution at the time, negotiating record deals from the waiting room. Eventually, he landed a deal, and for the first time, his lo-fi songs were giving a high production studio treatment. But just as quickly as his breakthrough came, it crumbled. His mental health struggles made the industry uneasy, and the machine that once chased him turned him away just as fast. Despite this, Daniel Johnston's legacy grew. His music, once dismissed, became a gospel for a generation of songwriters. In 2005, the documentary The Devil and Daniel Johnston introduced his story to the world, proving that his music wasn't just weird, it was profound. His once overlooked songs are now covered by rock legends. His art, once sketched in notebooks for no one, is now displayed in galleries selling for thousands of dollars. Daniel passed in 2019, but his influence only grows stronger. He proved that pure, unfiltered creativity can break through anything, and that if you keep creating, keep pushing, your audience will find you. He wasn't built for the mainstream, but built for something even better, a cult following that truly understood him. If there's one thing these artists prove, it's this: true art doesn't expire. The industry may reject you, the mainstream may ignore you, but if what you create is real, it'll find its people, whether it takes 10 years or 50. Rodriguez, Death, Pentagram, Nick Drake, and Daniel Johnston were all dismissed in their time, but their music endured. Because great art doesn't need permission to exist. It just needs the right ears to hear it. So if you're out there creating something and it feels like no one's listening, remember this. Maybe it's not you that's out of place. Maybe the world just hasn't caught up yet. Now, which of these stories hit you the hardest? Drop in the comments and let's celebrate the artists who never compromised.